Hey y'all, Ashes of Creation Alpha 2 weekend number 2 is in the books. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly from everything that happened during this second weekend's test. So, starting off with the good, the very first thing that I have on my list is the DDoS attacks. Obviously, not the DDoS attacks themselves are good, but you have to think that last week people weren't able to get in basically all day on Sunday. It was like a 7 to 9 hour continuous, sophisticated DDoS attack that Intrepid could not, in that exact moment, deal with in a way that allowed them to get people onto the server, and they ended up having to cancel the tests. Well, as soon as the servers came up today, DDoS attack immediately. Whoever's doing this was waiting, and they wanted to see how good Intrepid's response was going to be, and they passed with flying colors. The first, I would say, 2 hours, they were implementing their mitigation strategies that what they'd come up with all week long. I don't know what that is because I'm not a tech expert, but they within a couple of hours, it seems like it stopped, and then the rest of the weekend they were able to just play normally and were not suffering from DDoS attacks that I could tell. I mean, I was able to log in and out and authenticate and all that stuff, so I'm guessing the DDoS attacks stopped. So whoever was doing it, they failed. At the end of the day, they failed, and so we are back here to being able to log in every day or every day on the weekends without a bunch of issues. So good on Intrepid for figuring that issue out and getting it out the way. And as I was saying last week, this is a good thing. This is straight up a good thing that this happened. Yes, it affected our first weekend. Yes, that's terrible. Yes, I would be 16 instead of 14 right now if that hadn't happened, but it did. So, but they learned from it and they corrected the mistake, and now it's much less likely to happen in the future when there's even more players that'll be affected. So great. Second thing is queue times. Hey, like, don't get me wrong, there are still some people who are really affected by some type of a queue bug that's causing some pretty serious issues, it seems like, with them specifically. But for the most part, people were able to log in all weekend long, log in and out of the game as needed. I waited in a queue for like 5 minutes right when I first logged in, and then never waited in the queue again after that. I just went straight into the game every time. So queue times for the most part are fixed. Now, November 8th, that's this upcoming Friday. That is the first weekend where the people who bought those Wave 1 packs are going to be coming in. So I'm calling them the first waivers. The first waivers are going to be coming in, and I suspect there's going to be a lot more people trying to log in. This may affect queue times by a pretty significant margin, unless Intrepid decides to open another server just for those people, and we'll see if that ends up being what happens. This is crazy. Combat's better somehow. I actually know why it's better. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic and silly. During all the pre-Alpha 2 testing, everything was done in one of two ways. Either we had a vendor there that we could go to and buy a scroll that would give us gear and levels up to 15 or 20 or 25, just depending on which test it was. But that test lasted a very short amount of time, and we were testing something very specific, and that was it. And so it was not... We didn't get a lot of experience playing, and I also didn't get the experience what those classes were like at lower levels. And then they started doing tests where we started from zero. We had no vendor to buy all that stuff, and we had to build towards stuff. And I had two things going on. Number one, I wanted to test all the different classes so that I could speak a little bit on each of the different classes. Number two, I didn't want to burn myself out in testing because I wanted to experience this game with my guildies, with my friends at Alpha 2 launch. So I didn't level past about 9 or 10 on most characters. I think I got to 12 on a ranger one time. But I was going to about 9 or 10 on every character just to try out all the different classes. Well, I got my fighter to 12 on Saturday morning, or Friday night. I think it was Friday night. I got it to 12. And that's when you get that top row of abilities. So you can get up to your best stuff. And I got Blood Infusion, and I started playing around with Cataclysm and Leap Strike and the different abilities that are up there. And it makes the class, like, those abilities round out the class so well. And Fighter feels amazing. Everything about the combat from the perspective of the player is great. The perspective of the enemies, we'll talk about that because that's a whole different thing. But from the player, how it feels, are you fulfilling that fighter? What is it called? Class fantasy? Yes, You absolutely are. Does it feel good when you're moving? Yes. Are the buttons responsive? Yes. Like it does everything that you want it to do for combat. Combat got better for me because we got higher levels and got access to more abilities. So that's always a good sign for an MMO. And the last thing, man, the last thing on my good list, that drama. Oh, that drama. So I've been saying for years now, and not that this was some magical prediction on my part. It's not hard to figure out that there's going to be a lot of drama in this game that's basically medieval Eve, and Eve is known for drama. So we are 2 tests in, 2 weekend tests. We've been playing for 6 days, but really 5 because Sunday of last week didn't count because the DDoS attack. And there's already drama on my server over petty shit. Like it's already started. We got this one guild. They're a big guild. They're probably the biggest guild. Maybe not as big as Pirate Software because my guild also has Thor from Pirate Software. It's got his guild on it. I don't know how many people he has, but this other guild is big. And not only are they big, but they are just like to some degree in everybody's face. Like they're constantly saying the name of their guild in chat. I think that's just to identify for, hey, can you invite me to something? It's not, I don't think they're trying to like advertise by just spamming their name, but you're seeing it all the time. And then they're advertising on top of it. And then they also run the server Discord. And so they're just there. They're very prominent because they're a big guild. More power to them. I'm not trying to talk trash about this guild at all. More power to them. But what's funny is the smaller guilds are starting to get tired of it already. It's been just a few days and you're starting to see stuff in chat talking trash about that guild. I saw one person was basically bragging about their numbers in this guild, and somebody else said something like, "Congratulations, you joined a corporate guild that accepts everybody, that doesn't turn away anybody. Woohoo! You have so much talent, and that those sorts of drama and politics are already starting to happen. And I already do know, like I've said before, there's like backroom politicking going on about who's going to be the next mayor of these different nodes and stuff. Seriously, I've heard several stories been told, privy to some information about 3 different nodes that they are planning on installing a new mayor through, I would say, more or less nefarious means. So all the politicking has already started. I cannot wait for the insanity that is going to be at launch of this game when the map is absolutely massive and we're leveling past stage 3 of the nodes and all that stuff. It's going to be, it's just going to be incredible, y'all. The drama has already started, and don't we all love that drama? Moving on to the bad, the game's still pretty buggy. It really is. And I don't mean bugs that aren't really a big deal, because every game, like a good example I always think of is like a cloak clipping through armor, or clipping, not closing over the helmet correctly or whatever, like just stuff like that, little graphical glitches and whatever, stuff like that. I'm talking about like you go to the bank or the warehouse, I think it's called, and you go to try to put some stuff that you have in your inventory into the warehouse, and you can't. And then you try right clicking, you try drag and dropping, you're trying everything, nothing will make it work. You try moving stuff out of the bank into your inventory, that won't work. And the only way to fix this issue is to log out and log back in. Now that's not a huge issue as far as like the fix, but that's a pretty nasty bug. Like that's not fun to deal with. Every time you get back to town, you got to relog just a bank. And there are just a lot of bugs that are in that vein. Just stuff like that really, really needs to be fixed. That being said, as I always say when I talk about these things, about the bad stuff, this is an alpha. Us testers, we are well aware that it's an alpha. I am not trying to say that Intrepid has to fix this or I'm going to quit or anything like that. I'm just pointing out the areas where they probably should be focusing soon, if they aren't already, which we already know with bug fixes they are. Practically every patch notes is just filled with bug fixes. The next thing is the lighting. I don't know. So I was looking out into the distance at the same time as my guildmates, and they were watching me on stream, and the lighting was messed up, like just awful lighting. So I might have been a setting that I have on my computer. That may have been what's causing it, but even if it is, there's some type of a lighting issue, and a couple of my other guildies said they were dealing with something similar. So they definitely still have some lighting passes they need to do to get the lighting right. But I would say right now, in the bad category, the worst thing, the thing that really, really needs the most work now in order to really shore up the best part of this game, which as myself and many other creators are saying is the combat, they've got to fix the enemy pathing and behavior. The enemy pathing is all over the place. They randomly run to different areas all the time. It's warping to different places, disappearing and reappearing in other locations, and all kinds of stuff like that. There's an enemy called a Bork, it's a B-O-R-K. It's like a corrupted dog kind of thing, like a corrupted wolf or something like that. Their pathing in particular is awful. They don't stand still for nothing. They're just all over the place, randomly bouncing around from person to person, sometimes warping, sometimes running, sometimes gliding along the ground. It's just awful. And then the enemy behavior as well is really strange, because we're finding that, I'm trying to remember exactly what we discovered, but it's something like if one of your teammates dies, or let's say multiple of your teammates dies in a fight, and you guys decide to book it. We're going to get out of here. We're not going to all stay and die. We realize we're not going to win this fight. Everybody leaves. You basically stay in combat with whatever was trying to kill you, no matter how far away you go. I'm not saying they chase you. I'm saying you stay in combat with them. So you go far away, sit down, and all of a sudden you're sitting there, and all of a sudden he walks up and takes a shot at you, and then turns around and turns around and runs. And that happens over and over again, and your regen is slow because you're technically in combat. And then you might decide, hey, we're going to go fight somewhere else because that area is too dangerous, and you'll be halfway across the map, maybe not that far, but far away, and all of a sudden the guy that you were fighting all the way over there just appears in your party out of nowhere and is attacking you, and you're like, what is going on here? So there's definitely some enemy pathing and behavior issues that need to be fixed, but again, I'm sure that they are working on that. Moving on to the ugly. The crafting station situation, I'm not sure if it was thought about, if they really thought about the situation that was going to be created, if it's intended gameplay, which it might be. I see this being intended gameplay when we have 85 nodes, but when there's only 5 nodes, there's a problem. Here's the problem. When a node gets to level 3, it becomes a village, and it gets 2 service buildings that can be built on it. And there are 5 nodes in Alpha 2, meaning that 10 total service nodes can be built if your nodes are all, your node mayors are all coordinating and deciding who's going to build what, so that you get a maximum spread of 10. There's 20 available service buildings, and the service buildings are what are required in order for you to craft higher level stuff. So for example, I chose to be a leather worker. I'm a fighter, so medium armor is probably what I'm going to wear. I said, hey, I'm going to do leather working. Well, my server chose not to have a Hideworks, which is the service building that you need to make level 10 and higher gear. So it doesn't matter how much practice I do, how much low level leather gear I make, I'll never be able to make the level 10 apprentice level gear, ever. Unless someone takes over a node and demolishes a building that the community worked hard to build and builds up another one, which is a possibility. And I guess that is the intended gameplay. But it seems like from a testing perspective, and especially for how long we're going to be on this map with 5 nodes, it seems like there should have been a different solution. I am hoping that when nodes are allowed to get to level 4, that will give them more service building options, hopefully several more, so that we can have all the service buildings available somewhere on the map, at least for Alpha 2, so that we can test. We're not going to be able to test Apprentice Hidework on my server at all. And there's only 3 servers. There's a pretty good probability that there's at least 1 craft, or maybe 2, that will never get tested because that service building doesn't exist because of that. I don't know if it's an oversight or if it's intended, but for me, that's the ugly. I'm not real happy about that. And as an aside, not related to leatherworking, our community also voted to not build an animal husbandry station, so we're never going to have apprentice mounts. We're all going to be running around on the slow ass 140% boring mount forever, unless somebody sieges a node. And we don't even have node sieges. I guess unless somebody outvotes a mayor and again tears down a building that the community helped build and builds another one. So yeah, that's the ugly for me. Moving on to my final thoughts. This was a huge success of a weekend. Between the stifling of the DDoS attack alone makes it a win. Huge win for them. The servers were up all weekend. They took them down for a couple of hours, a couple of times for maintenance, but they got them back up when they said they would. I think one of the times they got them up faster than they said they would. Other than that, the servers were there. There were no big realm crashes or anything like that that I'm aware of. At least I'm not on my server. So from that perspective, it was really good. And while there is work to be done, because I don't want to blow smoke and tell you guys this is the most amazing thing ever. I mean, I'm loving it, and I'm addicted to it, and I'm going through withdrawals of not having it right now as we speak. But I want to show you guys a little glimmer of the future that in my mind, just could not be brighter. And this is what I'm experiencing as I play this game, as I'm running around and doing different things. I'm constantly see these little things that I'm like, oh, when that gets fleshed out, when that's finished, when this system gets in and that complements what I just saw, I see it. And I want to give you guys just a little tiny glimmer of hope in regards to that. One of my guildies found this mount, the Veshin Komodo. It is a rare ground mount that has 165% ground speed and 130% water speed, which if you guys know, when you're running around in your horse in the water, it's slow. It's better to get out and swim. So that is an awesome, awesome mount. Not full mount though, because it has to be turned into that with it. I think it's actually a crafting recipe. It has to be turned into that with animal husbandry. And as I said on my server, we're never going to have the animal husbandry station. However, little things like that, little glimpses of stuff that's coming down the line, little actually rare things that you're like, oh crap. Like the first person who has one of those running around at 165% on the ground and 130% in the water is going to have a big advantage over other people. And just that little bit that Stephen always said, it's not a trophy for everyone gained. And here we are. This is something that not everybody's going to have access to, at least not for a long time. And I just think that's really cool. And I'm really, really excited for what's coming in the future with that. I do have another video coming out a little later on this week. It is going to be a guide video on the unkillable AoE fighter. That I had a blast with my fighter this weekend, and they're so good. So you guys make sure that you subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell if you want to make sure you get my fighter guide that's coming up here in a couple weeks. Other than that, I'll see you guys in a video here real soon.